Yeah, so slow and small solutions always is it would be kind of my first advice. I mean, there's the time to ramp up and scale, but yeah, that's where you got to start. Is you know start small, uh, work on something. You don't even have to have your entity set up. Like everybody says, go get an LLC or whatever. Just start, right? Just start testing something, a small test, and then iterate from that and move from there.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Joshua Prieto, as close as I'm going to get. And Josh is grew up in Utah and went to Riverton High. In his own words, wasn't the best student, but made it through, and then went to the U of U and wanted to be an entrepreneur, and worked for a lot of early stage businesses, also, or while going to school and afterwards, and then started a business with his wife in the photography business, which then evolved into the branding business. And then the clients that weren't or were his ideal clients wanted to or weren't his ideal clients, if I can not get my tongue tied, and wanted to work with more impactful businesses or more impactful businesses. So parted ways with the business partners, started the current business that is looking to help other businesses that are wanting to make an impact. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Josh.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, Devin.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on and have a good conversation. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed into the 30 or 45-second version of it. But why don't we rewind and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started going to Riverton High?
Sure. Yeah, I'm one of those students that wasn't a very good student in high school. I didn't conform to normal schooling. I went to you being from Utah as well. I think you understand um, that it can be a little bit of a cookie cutter state, and a certain type of uh, person grows up and goes through just fine in the education system there. But I have always been a little bit on the outlier. I was dyslexic, had a really hard time reading, and it kind of just made me not like the current school setting that I was in. But I always loved business, and I had this fascinating business teacher. I forget the name of the class. I actually even forget the name of the teacher. That's how impactful my time at Riverton was. But yeah, I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad from that teacher's recommendation, and many entrepreneurs understand it, and it basically said one of the things that really stuck in my mind is if you want to be an entrepreneur, which I really always wanted to be an entrepreneur, learn sales and marketing. And so that's kind of what I did right off the bat is I started learning everything I could about sales and marketing, and I went to through a bunch of different sales businesses or sales positions, and then eventually I got into a marketing position because I actually enjoyed more of the marketing side, messaging and creating stories and kind of creating narrative that was transformative for the brand, right? So I got into marketing, but as I was doing that, I went to school because I didn't know anything else to do because I was afraid of actually starting a business. I went to school for entrepreneurship, and I went and did that at U. And my reasoning for getting into business was to do good with it. I always thought business was meant to solve solutions that bettered the environment, bettered social communities and people, right? And that's really what I wanted to do. I was a big fan of like Patagonia and how they kind of went through their business, and I love clothing brands, so I thought that would be my first kind of startup and start out in clothing brands. And then I kind of found the sad truth of what clothing brands really are. A lot of greenwashing, a lot of um, um, unsustainable, not so regenerative practices, and decided that wasn't it for me either. But kind of long story short of how I got into entrepreneurship was first I tried learning everything I could about how to be a business owner, but it really just took diving in, starting something to actually do the majority of my learning, and it took me some time. So right after um, college, I started working on a startup idea where I would help and consult people to build um, earthen homes out of out of essentially dirt, right? And creating homes that were regenerative in that form. And because my wife and I had tried to build one ourselves, there was all the red tape around trying to build these things, and so we thought we would start a business helping people try to go do an alternative building style, right? And that was our first business idea. It kind of led into us getting into this weird thing called permaculture, which is if you were to look at it, it's a design philosophy that helps you look at your environment and your culture and your community as a closed loop system, right? Where you don't necessarily have to take the extractive and exploitative systems, but you kind of from nature pattern your life and your businesses around uh, the same principles that exist in nature. A small example of that would be um, something called aquaculture, which is you have a fish in this system that actually you plant your plants in a water system that is set up with fish that are in that system, and the fish, the nutrients from their poop and their waste actually gets fed into that feeds your plants, and so you have this closed loop system that kind of feeds itself, right? And the plants, nutrients from the plants, and it kind of feed the fish as well, right? So you have this closed loop system, and to do that on a bigger and bigger scale. So we found this out. We thought we would help people that were trying to build their homes more green, turn it into a closed loop system. So their home, they collect rainwater collection, they have a garden, they have all these wonderful things kind of working for themselves. And so my wife and I thought we would go out and do this while we were trying to build our own home, realized that we could possibly build our own farmstead. And so this was like our first big pivot in our business. We were helping out these smaller businesses or smaller homeowners, like trying to get through zoning problems and trying to build their earth bag home in a similar way that we were trying to do it ourselves. But we wound up purchasing some land in Montana and trying to live the same dream that we were trying to help others to accomplish as well, to build out this farmstead that was growing food, selling it in the local markets, and was self-sustaining. It was an off-grid farmstead, right? And so we were building this out. We had some 10 acres, but we were never farmers before, and we just got ourselves into a lot all at once. We had 3 kids at the time, and 2 kids when we started this project, and then by the end of it, we actually had 4 kids, and really just kind of got ourselves into a little bit got ourselves into trouble in over our heads, I would say, with things that we didn't know how to do, like regenerative farming, building a house all on our own, and that's kind of what started this whole this business that we're kind of in today. What we were doing for income was I was a self-employed entrepreneur. Well, I just had my own consulting business, is what it was, doing marketing, and my wife was doing photography, and we were doing branding and marketing consulting work for a time, and that was paying for the bills and paying for our project. And this side this business that was mostly a side project, but we wanted to make it our main thing. And so we were doing all right with our consulting, but at a certain point, we actually just got into a really bad winter, and our build went, just multiple things that kept on piling up on us, on our farmstead, to the point where we felt like it would be better to stop the farmstead, go back to the city and kind of regroup and regather. And so that was like a huge pivotal point for us, because we wanted to do this dream and we had this business idea around it, but we had a hard time making it happen. And we spent all of our money, all of our effort into doing this. And then when we came back to the city, it was so difficult to kind of regather and like, what do we really want to do? Right.
Now, let me
So
one
that's
maybe question just to follow up on that. So I mean, because I think that sounds like an admirable thing to do. Sounds like something you guys were passionate about. Sounds like something that was rewarding. So when you get to that point, how did you make that kind of final decision? Okay, hey, we may want to do this at some point in the future. We may circle back to it, but at least for now, this isn't something that we're able to or going to continue forward, and we have to do something else. Kind of, how did you arrive at that decision, and how did you figure out what you were going to do next at that point?
Yeah, so for us, it was, we kind of waited until the last minute, and I think this was something that we kind of learned from. It's not like we put ourselves into an extreme amount of debt. We were doing everything cash, and it was taking a while to kind of build things on our own. But really, what it came down to for us was kind of two big pieces that's kind of led to that decision. One was, you have to have a really good, strong community and engagement with when you're doing something new, especially. And I would say entrepreneurs in this day and age, if you don't have, you can't build businesses alone, essentially, right? And we were building something that was quite different. We wanted to bring in different community but it was still a novel idea in a lot of people's heads to live off grid, to create an off grid farmstead, and to do that. And we didn't have this sense of community where we had purchased the land and really felt like we could, do a barn raising and have people come out and help us, even though there was farmers around us and trying to do their own thing. We still had a hard time gathering the right type of community for us. So that was kind of one big indicator. And the next was just a necessity thing. Like we realized that at some point, if we were going to keep on diving our efforts into this and the money into this project, that we weren't, it just didn't add up, right? At this current point, we couldn't get to a point where it was going to give us the return to pay for our necessities of our family at that moment. And we were just doing way too much, right? I was still doing consulting work for marketing and branding, and also trying to build a home, while also trying to grow food and produce. And so all of these different things were just compiling on themselves. And the biggest thing I think that was the biggest factor is we were doing it all alone, and we realized that we couldn't do it alone. We have to go kind of regroup, build out a better network of people that are interested in building those types of lifestyles, and then see if we can then come back to this idea of an off-grid homestead or farmstead.
Wow, makes sense. Now you said, okay, you're gonna go do that. You're gonna regroup. You're gonna figure things out. Maybe figure out further how to build a community. You also have the business that you guys have been doing that is, kind of building brands and photography and whatnot, that is, been paying the bills, or has otherwise been the sustaining business. So you come back or start to regroup and kind of walk us through, how did that lead to where you're at today, or kind of where did that lead you, or lead you along your journey?
Yeah. So the thing that was making us money kind of kept on making us money. And so when we moved back to Salt Lake City, because we had purchased land in Montana, and kind of uplifted our home from where we were familiar. Then we came back to Salt Lake City, where I had more of a community where we could kind of build from um, relationships that we had already established growing up, right? And so I continued to do consulting work, but this time I thought about what if we just took a big sabbatical from our dream of creating this off-grid homestead, um, and teaching people how to do it themselves, to realizing to just making our what was making us money, what was turning our economic engine, so to speak, right? And build a branding agency. And so we kind of focused on, let's just do this for 3-4 years, build our branding agency, make it something to where we can have this successful business that runs on its own, and then we can go maybe pursue our passion over here, right, in the sustainable and regenerative movement, and regenerative agriculture. And so that was what we dove straight into afterwards, is trying to build up a branding agency. And I took on a partner to do that, someone who was a wonderful creative, and had been working in the Salt Lake Valley, the Silicon Valley for a little while, in helping high growth companies to create beautiful video production stuff, right? And doing that in a marketing storytelling way. And so I took on that partner. We started working on it together, and things were going good. It was, as any startup, you have this period of huge hustle in the beginning to get your first clients and whatnot, and it was doing really well, in the sense that we got some really big clients that were early for us. We got to work with Zag, if you're familiar with Zag, which is a local company in Utah for the Salt Lake area. We did Young Living, help them to redo their brand for their nonprofit and for their creative branding. And we did a bunch of smaller businesses. Some of them we were hoping to do like high growth startup, help them to get their early stage seed funding and Series A and those types of things, right? And help them with their message. And so we started doing some really fun work there, and I was excited about it. But there was this nagging feeling that I wasn't working with the people that I really wanted to work with, and businesses that were creating the change that I wanted to see in the world. And that kind of nagged at me long enough that my business partner, and creatives in general, sometimes like this, you have to have a big budget to do really cool creative branding work, right? And sometimes that means you're working with, McDonald's or Coca-Cola, or big names that have the money, or a startup that's gotten a lot of seed funding or whatever, right? And which also means you kind of just go where the money goes to create marketing messages. And I didn't like that feeling necessarily, and I felt like I was going in a direction that I didn't really want to. So our pivot was, well, what if we just started working with more regenerative businesses? Regenerative being businesses that aren't very looking to extract or exploit in their business models, or their business models aren't set up on extractive and exploitative business systems or economic systems, but that have a regenerative process to it, right? So raw materials actually create a product, but that product doesn't have a waste cycle. It turns into something else, right? And it regenerates itself, rather than extracts from the planet and people and future generations, right? And so we wanted to focus on that. My business partner really had ideas of just growing a big branding agency, and this would be slower growth for him. And so we kind of just decided that we were two different cats, trying to go two different directions, right? And you can't really herd any cats. So we decided to kind of part ways, and we decided that we would work exclusively with brands and businesses that are regenerative. And that's kind of what this business kind of started from. But in that realm, there's so much support that businesses that are trying to move away from extractive systems, like let's just take agriculture, for example, right? Agriculture is huge in the world. We need it. We need food, and we need food products, and it needs to be delivered on time and in the right ways. But we have this extractive system where we have chemical pesticide, chemical fertilizer. We till the earth. We until there's nothing left on the soil, and really there's only 50 years left of soil if we continue at that extractive rate, right? 50 harvests left in the northern or southern hemisphere, essentially,
So,
before we deplete our soils.
so now just as we're starting to get towards the end of the podcast, I want to be able to catch up to where you're at today. So give us a bit of an idea. So you make the pivot, you say, here's where we want to focus the business, here's where we want to be, and here's how we want to approach it. Where's the business at today? Is it taking off? It's a wild success and you have more clients you know what to do with? Are you still figuring things out, still building the business? Is it teetering on bankruptcy, teetering on or being a multi-trillion-dollar business, or somewhere in between? Or give us an idea kind of where things have evolved to where you're at today.
Yeah, definitely. So we're still a startup ourselves. I mean, this has always been a business idea that we had from the very beginning, and it's kind of evolved and pivoted as we've gone. But it's been a side project for a lot of things, and kind of just on the thing. So we moved this full time. This project that we call Seeds of Dow, which is the current business that we have. And so Dow meaning path. We're seeding the path towards regenerative change for entrepreneurs and business owners. And so where we're currently at is we were very slow growth for so long. And now realizing it was one of those things that I wanted to bootstrap the entire way, but realizing that our growth is needing capital infusion and needing to be able to go quicker than just a bootstrap manner. We've been going out and seeking investment. So that's the process that we're in. It's a new process for me. I've been in the entrepreneurial realm in Salt Lake and met investors and helped businesses market and create messaging for investors. But I've never raised capital myself, and so that's kind of the new movement or moments that we're kind of stepping into. The consulting and branding agency work has been there and has kind of helped us to kind of bridge that gap. But it's been so slow trying to invest in this business to grow it to where we're where we want to be, which is an incubation platform, acceleration platform for regenerative entrepreneurs, helping them not just in their marketing and branding, but also in building their business, getting the right type of counsel, getting the right type of support to build businesses that are moving away from the extractive and exploitative systems. So that's where we're currently at.
Sounds like a great place to be in. No, it sounds like a great place to be, and plenty of opportunity ahead, and a lot of areas to grow and to continue to expand the business. So that's exciting, and sounds like a great direction to be headed. So, well, now as we start to wrap up the episode, I always like to ask 2 questions at the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about the worst business decision. I think as business owners, you learn from your mistakes, and as entrepreneurs, that's just the name of the game. That's the only way you kind of reach success, is by just learning from the things that you did wrong. And I would say the biggest one that we learned on is going too fast, too soon, right? So dumping in a ton of capital with an unproven model, not understanding really where it was all going to lead, right? And just kind of diving in with too big, too fast, right? Rather than using more slower and more proven smaller solutions, right? Starting small with a slower way of building it out. And so now we kind of took that approach. Now we kind of feel like we need to speed up a little bit. So there's always that time in your business as well. So I would say that was the biggest mistake, is what I mentioned earlier, is we dove in and put all our capital, all our efforts into this farmstead, which it turned out, like we sold the property, we made a really good profit from it. After we decided we weren't going to pursue that, we even held on to the property for some time, thinking that we'd come back to it. But in the end, that's really what it was. Is that the big failed attempt of our farmstead was we didn't have a community, so that was a huge piece to it. And then the other piece was we didn't we put too much into it. It wasn't a slow and small solution. It was a huge solution that we were trying to build out all at once.
No, it makes sense. And sometimes that's hard because you get excited about the opportunity, the direction, things that can go, all the possibilities, and you get excited, and then you want to rev up and do or chase everything at once. And theoretically, it works out great. You can tell yourself how you can do it, and yet sometimes you either lose focus or you aren't able to get everything done, or you try and grow too quickly, and it becomes overwhelming. Or you're not able to accomplish the thing. So that definitely is a understandable mistake and a great one to learn from. Now, the second question I always like to ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, so slow and small solutions always it would be kind of my first advice. I mean, there's the time to ramp up and scale, but that's where you got to start. Is start small, work on something. You don't even have to have your entity set up. Like everybody says, go get an LLC or whatever. Just start, right? Just start testing something, a small test, and then iterate from that and move from there. And then I guess the second piece of that is, as you're building building up those small and slow solutions, build it up with community, and that will help you to scale as you grow, right? So build it alongside people that are doing similar things or things that work along with your business, and have the right partners, have the right community that is going to support you, and you're going to be able to support them in your growth, because we all sink or float together, right?
Yep. No, I think that's a great one. I think sometimes entrepreneurs tend to want to do it on their own or go their own direction because they're saying, hey, I want to be able to captain my own ship, and yet building that community, building the people around you, and being able to leverage what others have learned and otherwise have garnered along their journeys can make a big impact on the success of your business. So I think that's a great takeaway. Well, so now as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So Joshua Paul Prieto is my full name, and that's the name that I have on LinkedIn. And Prieto is spelled Prieto. And if you say it with an Italian accent, it's probably easier to spell it out, right? So Prieto. And we are, if you want to get engaged with us and you're a business that's wanting to move away from these extractive systems that our economy is essentially built on, we have to do it together. We have to do it in community, and that's how we kind of build through. So come join our community on our website. It's seedsofdao.com. DAO like the Tao Te Ching, so it's spelled TAO, so seeds, and then of DAO, TAO.com. And there's a place where you can click on join community, and you can head over there and join our community. It's free. And then we have some paid programs, courses, and other cohort programs to kind of help you move through the stages of your own business.
Awesome. Well, definitely some great ways to connect, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So thank you again, Josh, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. Helps us to help even more startups and small businesses along their journey to success. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your startup, your small business, with patents or trademarks or anything else along your journey, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Josh, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
All right. Well, thank you, Devin. Have a good one.